Hi there, this is Elizabeth Anderson. I'm a registered dietitian and the owner of CrackerJack Nutrition in southern New Hampshire. This is a presentation I gave at the Weight Loss Surgery Foundation of America's annual meet and greet in Tampa earlier this year, and it's called Why a Nut, short for nutritionist, is your BFF athlete. Before I really get into the nuts and bolts of the thing, it's important that I share a disclaimer. I have never had weight loss surgery. And while I have struggled with significant weight issues in the past, I've never undergone a surgical procedure for weight. And because of that, I have not been on the front line of some of the experiences that you have gone through. So as you listen to this talk today, if you hear anything that feels contrary to your personal experience or flat outright wrong or feels offensive in some way, it's really important that you make a note of it, and at the end of the presentation when I put up my contact slide, if you could contact me with a text or an email or call me and share that feedback, no megaphone required, that would be so helpful to me. BFFs, besties, best friends forever. Seriously, Elizabeth, this is kind of like junior high school girl terminology. Yes, it is. But what I was trying to make an outrageous point out of is the fact that it is so essential that after you have weight loss surgery, you establish a close, long-term partnership with a registered dietitian. I chose this particular photo because a kitten and a rabbit typically have an adversarial relationship. And I think for many years, people who struggled with their weight and dietitians also had kind of a contentious relationship. And to this day, I think a lot of people think of dietitians as these thin women that wear long white lab coats, eat apples and drink water, and can't for the life of them understand why anyone would be overweight. We're hoping that those days are long gone. Our training now covers, of course, the physiology and the ABCs of nutrition, but we also spend a good amount of time on counseling skills and meeting the individual with where they are in their particular life circumstance instead of trying to press our diet agenda onto you. In this particular slide, you are the white line. That's your body or your skin per se. Dietitians are good friends to have because we can help with both those external influences and the biological things that are happening inside. By external influences, I mean things like family pressures, work pressures, after you've had weight loss surgery. Our food environment is so toxic, dealing with those kinds of pressures. Also, what's happening inside, we do like to think we're experts on that as far as your GI or gastrointestinal tract goes. Plus, we're also experts at recognizing when things are not as they should be, because we understand the particular surgical procedure and we understand how things have changed. Surgery is just the beginning. I think most patients would agree with that statement. Maybe initially they might have thought that after the surgery, when they woke up in post-op, the worst part would be over. But I think that most people would agree it's just a tool, it's just the beginning. The real hard work begins when the honeymoon period is over and hunger returns and you have to make those 200 food decisions every single day. Having a partner there along the way to help you in your individual circumstance is so essential. When we've looked at the research to determine what are the characteristics that successful weight loss winners have had after surgery, they've seen that two out. The first one is nutrition assessment is constantly done and diet is managed. And those are the two skills that registered dietitians. I wanted to include some evidence to support this tooting my own horn. In the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, they said weight loss surgery patients are 4.6 times more likely to regain weight without follow-up care. I think that's funny because it's not 4 times, it's not 5 times, it's 4.6 times more likely. In the Journal for Obesity and Related Diseases, this is what was written: patients attending RD counseling significantly lowered their BMI by 5% or more. Adherence to recommended post-op diet is associated with percentage weight loss. So the registered dietitian chick, or I don't know what the male term for that would be. But whether you've got a registered dietitian that's a man or a woman, here are some of the things that you can expect from us. Those enhanced counseling skills, establishing individual eating plans. Yes, there's a certain dietary protocol based on what phase you are after surgery, but we need to tweak those so that they're doable for you in your particular environment. Of course, non-judgmental partnering is essential, and relapse prevention and recovery. Dietitians now do holistic nutrition in the sense that we're much more concerned with the entire picture of your life and not just what you're eating. One of the things that surprised me when I was preparing for this talk was how important expectations are in determining your long-term success with keeping weight off. If you have unrealistic expectations, that's like the number one thing that's a downfall for people. So, establishing realistic expectations, ideally pre-surgically, is the best thing. But making sure that what you're hoping for or striving for is within the realm of possibility is really important, and your dietitian can sit down and talk about that with you. Your emotional state. The issues and challenges you had before surgery are still there after surgery. Those need to be addressed, particularly if you ever used food as a coping mechanism or numbing tool. Your emotional support system after you leave the clutches of the clinical team per se. What's happening in your family? What's happening in your neighborhood, your social group, where you work? Are those people supporting you, or are they sabotaging you? You won't know until your experience begins, but there's a good chance you might need some help and some strategies for dealing with those challenges. Your economic situation is very important in the food choices that you make and what's available to you. Your cultural challenges or your cultural environment. If you go to a family event, are they going to have food available there that meets your needs? Or are they going to be offended by your particular food choices or what you choose to exclude from now on? We also want to look at your nutrition knowledge. I think one of the things that's so important for you to know is that we know that anyone who has struggled with their weight for most of their lives is basically an encyclopedia of nutrition facts. So never stick with a dietitian that underestimates your knowledge base. We do want to go over some things to make sure that there are no myths hidden in there that might be hiccups in your progress. Of course, we're going to go over the basics, your food choices, your meal timing, and your physical activity. Such an important piece of long-term success. A dietitian is a BFF as well when things get ugly, when gas happens, when you're constipated, when you have plugging or food gets stuck, when you go through dumping syndrome, either early or late dumping syndrome, when you're nauseous, when you're vomiting, when your hair starts to fall out and you don't know why. We understand the surgical procedure that you've had, and we can see if there's a food connection and a food treatment. We can also be there when life has special circumstances. Pregnancy seems plausible for many. A camel trip across the Sahara, maybe not so much, but you're going to need to make plans in advance if you're lucky enough to have that adventure. And then the unforeseen, like an illness or a surgical procedure. Your team is going to need to know that your internal wiring is different from the average person and have your particular needs readily available to be met. Let's look at some predictors of significant weight regain. Food intolerances. That might be surprising, but what happens is that people will find that, say, for example, protein sources are not going down very well. And so they'll start making choices that are oftentimes softer. And those softer foods can be so problematic because they can so easily lead to grazing behavior, which is so risky. So by soft foods, I mean the yogurt, the cottage cheese. The problem is these foods go down so easily and they empty the pouch so fast that hunger can return very quickly. And so you're eating much more often and not getting the satiety from it, which sets you up for trouble. Of course, lack of exercise is a major factor in weight regain. The soft calorie syndrome, which I mentioned earlier, and the grazing. If you've never been a big one for meals, Grazing is tough even if you haven't had weight loss surgery because you just don't have a sense of how much you're consuming, and it's typically mindless eating, so you're not enjoying it or appreciating it. Unresolved emotional issues, yep, like I mentioned earlier, if they were there before, they're still there, and they definitely need to be addressed. I often tell people that weight and issues with food are a symptom of something that's really an emotional barrier or challenge or issue that we have to deal with. And not planning your meals in advance. Again, this is something that people who haven't had weight loss surgery and have lost weight and want to maintain that weight loss have to do. But let's talk about the positive stuff as well. Through seeing hundreds, thousands of patients, we know what works, and self-monitoring works. 9 out of 10 people who have lost significant weight and kept it off, surgery or no, will tell you they write down what they eat every day, and they also keep track of their physical activity. I put contact and support in the top box because I'm a little partial to that. That's what this whole talk is about, maintaining contact with your registered dietitian and using us for support in the short and long term. Input and output, that's just fancy terms for input, your diet, what you eat, and output, how much you're burning off. How does surgery change your nutritional needs? Well, when the wiring is changed, and that's my terminology, I don't really love plumbing changes or GI changes. A couple of things are obvious. If your pouch is smaller, if your stomach's been greatly reduced in size, then fewer calories are going to be consumed. An issue of greater concern is that the area where nutrients, vitamins, and minerals can be absorbed is much smaller, and the transit time is much shorter as well. So there's less time and space for food to be absorbed. Reduced gastric secretions and pH. By that, I'm backtracking a little bit. We're going back up into the stomach area. What happens in an unsurgically altered stomach is kind of like a power wash system. The food comes down in this really strong thing, juice just breaks everything down into tiny pieces so that they can better be absorbed, or so that they can couple up with a little passenger that's going to help them be better absorbed down the line. All of that changes when the stomach size changes. Instead of a power wash breaking things into pieces as part of the digestion process, it's more like a kind of a weak garden hose. And so that's really can mess things up as well. We're aware of that, and we're on top of it for you. Of course, your nutrition changes in a big way in the sense that if you eat something wrong, quote unquote, I don't really like those terms, but something that has been proven to be harmful to you, you're going to feel it right away and have consequences. Among the most worrisome consequences are nutritional deficiencies. Is it really possible after you have so radically altered the digestive system to avoid deficiencies altogether? Remains to be seen. What we are very concerned about is the more testing we've done on patients pre-surgically, the more we've seen that baseline, there are lots of folks who are coming into surgery already deficient in thiamine, particularly blacks and Latinos. Vitamin D is across the board. Almost 80% of whites are presenting to surgery with vitamin D deficiency. That's not going to get any better after you change the size of absorption area and time for absorption. And iron, almost 50%, again, across whites, blacks. Still, I get the question, is it really a big deal to skip vitamins? Lots of people do it. And I say, yes, it's really a big deal. There are so many different types of bariatric vitamins and minerals that are available. It forms tablets, powders, chewables, melts, and concoctions as far as carbonate or citrate. A dietitian can walk you through that. But the two things that are essential for you to know right now as far as are vitamins and minerals or supplements a must, I would say they are because they play a vital role in your body size, in your weight. Here's how. Think of that old-fashioned game Mousetrap, where it was like this 2-foot-high structure, and you put the marble at the top, and it would run along the track and hit levers and open doors and fall through holes. Well, if you think of every time that marble encounters an obstacle, like a lever or a door or a slide or something, that's controlled by a vitamin or a mineral. And if that vitamin or mineral is not there in great enough quantity or not there at all because of a deficiency, the marble stops. And so if that mousetrap is your metabolism, you can see how one little vitamin deficiency can make a major difference. Some of those deficiencies and how they can affect you. A thiamine deficiency can lead to irreversible neuromuscular damage, coma, and death. A B12 deficiency, the signs and symptoms of that are disorientation, tingling, burning feet, memory loss, a sore tongue. Iron deficiency, of course, anemia, but that needs to be checked with a blood test. Spoon nails or rapid heart rate can often be a sign of iron deficiency. Your vitamin D deficiency is going to lead to a skeletal disorder, which often isn't obvious or symptomatic until a bone is broken, and then it's advanced osteoporosis. Protein deficiency. This leads to hair loss quite commonly. And this situation, which you don't want to have happen if you're trying to lose weight, fat stores are actually preserved and lean mass is used for fuel. Situation anyone wants to get into. Generalized vitamin and mineral chips are also something dietitians can help you with. We can steer you away from the time release varieties because we don't have time to spare. No enteric coating, that's the protective coating that helps buffer in the stomach. No good either if you've had weight loss surgery. With your calcium, you want the citrate because it's better absorbed than the carbonate. You need to separate your calcium and iron so they're both maximally absorbed. The USP seal, that stands for United States Pharmacopoeia. That's an individual independent lab that will put vitamins in a solution similar to stomach acid and see what happens. Ideally, you want it to dissolve so it can be absorbed. Sometimes nothing happens at all. And so that means if you're buying those vitamins, they're going out exactly the same way they came in, and your money with it. So much more to say, but don't want to take more than 17 minutes of your time. This is my contact information sheet with my phone number. My website's not on here, but it's CrackerJackNutrition.com. I encourage you to please reach out to me with any thoughts, comments, suggestions for this presentation. I really appreciate you taking the time and sticking with me. I hope to hear from you soon.